You already know something is wrong. You've known for a while, maybe weeks, maybe longer. There's been a shift, something you can't point to cleanly, can't prove, can't hold up as evidence, but it's there. A distance that wasn't there before, a coldness that appears and disappears without explanation. Moments where she's physically present and completely somewhere else at the same time. And you've been doing what people do when something feels wrong but they can't name it. You've been explaining it away, telling yourself you're being paranoid, that you're insecure, that you're projecting your own fears onto a situation that probably has a simpler explanation. That if something were actually wrong, you'd know. You'd be able to point to something real. But the feeling won't leave, because feelings like this don't come from nowhere. Here's what nobody tells you about betrayal. The most painful part isn't the moment you find out. It's the long stretch before, the weeks or months where some part of you already knew and another part of you worked overtime to unknow it, where your instincts were sending signals and your love for her kept turning down the volume. That conflict between what you sensed and what you wanted to believe, that's what this is going to resolve. Not to hurt you, not to make you paranoid about every relationship you'll ever have, but because clarity, even hard clarity, even the kind that confirms what you were afraid of, is always better than the fog of not knowing. Always, without exception. There are 4 signs, not rumors, not vague gut feelings, 4 specific, observable, psychologically grounded behavioral shifts that appear consistently when a woman is either cheating or moving emotionally toward it. And understanding them, really understanding them, not just the surface behavior, but the psychology underneath, will give you something no amount of suspicion ever could. It will give you certainty, one way or the other. And you deserve that. Before we get to the signs, you need to understand something about female infidelity that most people get completely wrong. Because without this foundation, the signs won't make full sense. The psychology, women rarely cheat the way men expect them to. The cultural script around cheating assumes it's primarily physical. Opportunity plus attraction equals betrayal. That's the model most people operate on. And for a certain pattern of male infidelity, it's not entirely wrong. But female infidelity, statistically, psychologically, consistently, operates on a different architecture. It almost always begins emotionally before it becomes physical. There is almost always a period, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, of emotional investment in another person before any physical line gets crossed. A gradual transfer of intimacy, of openness, of the kind of vulnerability she used to bring to you being redirected somewhere else. This matters enormously for what you're about to learn, because it means the signs of impending or ongoing infidelity in women are not primarily signs of physical behavior. They're signs of emotional migration, of a woman whose inner world has begun moving away from you, quietly, privately, in ways that are easy to miss if you don't know what you're looking at. And it also means something harder to sit with. By the time the physical betrayal happens, if it happens, the emotional one has usually been underway for a long time. The physical crossing of a line is often the last step in a process that began much earlier, with distance, with withdrawal, with the 4 signs you're about to learn. Sign 1. She stops bringing her problems to you. This one is so quiet that most men miss it entirely, not because they're not paying attention, because it looks, on the surface, like things getting easier, less conflict, less emotional weight, less of her coming to you with stress or frustration or the complicated interior weather of her daily life. And men, conditioned to see conflict as the problem and its absence as the solution, often experience this as relief. Things are calmer. She seems more self-sufficient. Maybe she's just in a good place. She's not in a good place. She's found somewhere else to take her problems. Here's the psychology underneath this. Emotional intimacy between 2 people is built and maintained through a specific mechanism, the sharing of vulnerability. When something is hard and you bring it to someone, and they receive it well, a bond forms and deepens. That mechanism is how closeness works. It's not romantic in the conventional sense, it's fundamental. It's the actual architecture of emotional connection. When a woman stops bringing her problems to her partner, it means one of 2 things. Either she has concluded, rightly or wrongly, that he is not a safe place for her vulnerability, or she has found someone else who is. Both of those things are serious, but the second one is the beginning of the process that leads to betrayal. Because whoever is now receiving her vulnerability, her stress, her fears, her frustrations, the unfiltered version of her inner life, that person is accumulating intimacy with her. Real, deep, structural intimacy. The kind that doesn't stay platonic indefinitely. Watch for this specifically, not whether she seems happy, whether she still brings you the difficult things, whether you still know what's actually weighing on her, whether her inner world is still open to you. If it's closing, if you're getting the edited version, the surface version, the version that's fine and nothing's wrong, pay attention to that. It's the earliest and most important signal. Sign 2, her phone becomes a closed door. This one people notice but consistently misread. They see the secrecy and think, evidence. They try to access the phone and can't or find nothing conclusive and feel either guilty for checking or gaslit by the inconclusiveness. That's the wrong frame entirely. The phone itself is not the point. The change in behavior around it is. Think about what the phone looked like 6 months ago, a year ago. Was it face up on the table? Did she hand it to you casually to show you something funny? Did she answer calls on speaker without thinking about it? Did the phone exist in your shared space as a neutral object? And now? Does it go face down when she sets it down? Does it come into rooms it didn't used to come into? Does she angle the screen away when she's typing? Does she take calls in another room that she used to take in front of you? None of those individual behaviors is conclusive. Together, as a pattern, as a shift from what was normal before, they're telling you something about what that phone now contains that her behavior before didn't require protecting. And here's the deeper psychology. People protect things that feel dangerous to expose. The phone isn't just a device anymore. It's become a boundary, a private space that she is actively, consciously maintaining as separate from you. That active maintenance, the daily repeated choice to keep that space closed, requires intention. It doesn't happen accidentally. It happens because something in there needs to be kept from you. But here's where it gets worse. Because the phone is a symptom, not the disease. Say this with me. I trust what I observe, not just what I'm told. Here's what everyone tells men who are suspicious in a relationship. Talk to her, communicate, tell her how you feel, ask her directly what's going on. Trust until you have proof. Don't let insecurity poison something real. And in a healthy relationship, with a partner who is genuinely present and committed, that advice is sound. But in a relationship where emotional migration has already begun, where the process is already underway, that advice walks you directly into a trap. Sign 3. She becomes an expert at making you feel like the problem. This is the sign that does the most damage, not because it's the most dramatic, because it's the most disorienting. Because it turns your own perceptiveness against you. You feel something is wrong, you raise it, and what comes back at you is not engagement with your concern. What comes back is a redirect toward your insecurity, your paranoia, your history of overreacting, your inability to trust, your neediness, your failure to appreciate what you have. Suddenly, the conversation is not about what you noticed, it's about what's wrong with you for noticing it. And because you love her, because you genuinely want to be fair, because you've been told your whole life that jealousy is a flaw and trust is a virtue, you absorb that redirect. You start auditing yourself. Maybe I am being paranoid. Maybe this is my insecurity talking. Maybe I'm about to destroy something real because I can't control my own fears. That self-audit, that turning inward of your own perceptiveness is the most effective defense mechanism available to someone who is hiding something. Because it doesn't require lying convincingly about facts, it just requires making you doubt your right to ask the questions in the first place. Watch for the pattern specifically, not whether she gets upset when you raise concerns. Upset is human and normal. Watch whether the conversation ever actually addresses what you brought up. Watch whether your concern ever gets genuinely heard and engaged with, or whether it always, reliably ends with you apologizing for having it. If you consistently leave these conversations feeling like the problem, if your legitimate perceptions keep getting reframed as your dysfunction, that pattern is information, and it points in one direction. Stop. Because I need to say something that contradicts what you might be feeling right now. The fact that she's making you feel crazy does not mean she's definitely cheating. Deflection and defensiveness can come from other places, from her own guilt about emotional distance, from shame about her feelings, from fear of a conversation she doesn't know how to have. But here's what it does mean, without exception. Something is being protected. Something is more important to her right now than your peace of mind. And whatever that thing is, whether it's a physical affair, an emotional one, or something else entirely, it is incompatible with the kind of honesty a real relationship requires. Sign 4. The intimacy disappears, but not her desire. This is the one that hits hardest, and it's the one that's most psychologically revealing about what's actually happening. Physical intimacy between you decreases, not dramatically, not overnight, but consistently and in one direction. She's less available, less present when it does happen. The quality changes before the frequency does. She's there but not there, going through motions that used to mean something. Most men interpret this as rejection, as evidence that she's no longer attracted to them, and they respond by either pursuing harder, which increases the pressure and pushes her further away, or withdrawing in wounded pride, which creates even more distance. Both responses miss what's actually happening, because here's the sign within the sign. Her desire doesn't disappear, it redirects. She may be less interested in intimacy with you and simultaneously more attentive to her appearance, more interested in going out, more energized by certain social situations. There's a vitality there, a spark that just isn't pointing at you anymore. That asymmetry, the withdrawal of intimacy from you alongside an increase in general vitality and self-investment, is one of the clearest signals available. Because desire doesn't just switch off, it moves. And when it moves away from you while clearly moving towards something or someone, the question is not whether there's a destination. The question is what or who that destination is. Repeat after me. What I feel in my body about this situation is real information.
Here's what you actually do with all of this. Because information without direction is just pain. And you didn't come here for more pain. You came here for clarity that leads somewhere. First, distinguish between the signs and the conclusion. These 4 signs, emotional withdrawal, phone secrecy, deflection of your concerns, redirected desire, are indicators, strong ones, psychologically grounded ones. But they are not individually or even collectively a confession. They're a signal that something significant has shifted in the relationship, something that requires a real, honest conversation. Not an accusation, not a confrontation built on surveillance and suspicion. A direct, calm, non-negotiable conversation about what you've observed and what you need. I've noticed a distance between us that wasn't there before. I've noticed you seem less present. I've noticed that when I raise concerns, I end up feeling like the problem. I need to talk about what's actually happening between us. That conversation, had clearly, without aggression, without ultimatum but without apology, is the only move available to you that doesn't make things worse. It either opens something or it confirms something. Either way, you get information. Second, understand why women arrive at this point. This is the part that's hardest to hear, and the most important. Women who cheat or who move toward it are almost universally doing so because something in the relationship has been empty for a long time. Not necessarily because of dramatic failure, often because of slow, quiet neglect. The gradual disappearance of genuine attention, of being truly seen, of feeling like she matters to you as a person rather than as a function in your life. That is not an excuse for betrayal. Nothing about what I just said makes deception acceptable or the damage it causes smaller. Betrayal is a choice, a serious, consequential, destructive choice, and the person who makes it owns that choice fully. But understanding the psychology behind it, understanding that it almost always grows in a specific kind of emotional soil, gives you something valuable. It gives you the ability to look honestly at the relationship, not just at her behavior, at both of you, at what's been present and what's been absent, at what you've both been doing and not doing. That honest look doesn't assign blame, it locates the truth. And the truth, however uncomfortable, is the only foundation on which anything real can be built or honestly ended. Third, decide what the information means for you. Here's where it becomes entirely personal, and where no script, no psychological framework, no outside voice can tell you what to do. If the signs are there, if the conversation confirms what you feared, if the distance is real and the explanation is what you suspected, you have a decision to make. Not immediately, not in the heat of the moment, but clearly and honestly, and with full knowledge of what you will and won't accept. Some relationships survive infidelity. Not easily, not quickly, not without both people doing the hardest work they've ever done. But some do. And the ones that do survive it are the ones where both people face the truth completely, not a managed, softened, partial version of it, and decide together that what they have is worth the work of rebuilding. Other relationships don't survive it, and shouldn't, because some betrayals are not just acts, but revelations. They reveal an incompatibility, a disrespect, a fundamental mismatch in values that was always there and is now impossible to ignore. And ending those relationships cleanly, with self-respect, without revenge and without prolonged suffering, is not failure. It's clarity in action. What you cannot do, what will cost you the most and give you the least, is stay in the fog, stay in the half-knowing, keep explaining away what you're observing because the alternative is too painful to face. The fog is always more expensive than the truth. Always. Fourth, what this means for who you become after. Whether you're in this situation right now or you've been through it before, or you're watching this because you want to understand human beings better, there's something here that goes beyond the immediate situation. The 4 signs you learned today are not just signs of infidelity. They're signs of emotional disconnection, of a relationship that has lost the things that make it real. Genuine attention, honest communication, real intimacy, the safety to bring your full self to another person. And those things don't disappear overnight. They erode, slowly, through small neglects and missed moments and conversations that didn't happen and needs that went unspoken and unmet. Which means the most powerful thing anyone can take from this, man or woman, in a relationship or not, is this. The health of a relationship is not maintained in grand gestures. It's maintained in daily presence, in actually seeing the person in front of you, in making them feel consistently in small and real ways that they matter, that you're paying attention, that they are safe to be honest with you. That's not romantic advice. That's the architecture of human connection. And when it's present, the conditions that lead to betrayal almost never develop. You came into this knowing something was wrong, but not being able to name it precisely, caught between what you felt and what you wanted to believe, between your instincts and your love. Now you have the names: emotional withdrawal, closed-door secrecy, deflection that makes you the problem, desire that redirects without disappearing. 4 signs, each one a window into the psychology of what happens when a relationship loses its foundation before anyone has admitted it out loud. What you do with this clarity is yours to decide, but you're deciding now with open eyes, not in the fog, not in the half-knowing. And that, however hard the truth turns out to be, is always the right place to stand. If this gave you language for something you've been living without words for, share it, because someone you know is in the fog right now, still explaining away what they're seeing, still hoping the feeling will just go away if they wait long enough. It won't. It never does. The truth was always there. Now, so are you.